if there's something that you want from somebody and you're not getting it, and so you offer something else in order to get something from them, usually that behavior is highly manipulative unless both people are very, 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 very straightforward about what's happening. And this applies to a whole host of behavior. One thing that I was speaking about yesterday was you can get stuck in a very deadly cycle of when you try to communicate with somebody, they don't listen to you. But then when you start to ratchet up the, I don't want to call it the histrionics. When you start to, there's behavior that I would call assurance-seeking behavior. And anytime you're doing this, you're putting the other person in the conversation in a very difficult to navigate spot because you're preying on their innate desire to kind of like calm you down, basically. So like, like let's say you ask somebody like, hey, do you want to hang out tomorrow? Sorry, I've already got plans, right? So somebody responds with this. Okay. And like, let's say that you wanted to hang out with them and you want to express like a little bit of sadness or whatever, right? You're like, this is like a good message, I think, right? Like, oh, okay. Well, we couldn't. That's sad for me. But if your plans change, let me know, right? This would be like an okay response, I think, right? That's fine. Okay. However, what some people do, I think, when they don't get the responses that they want from people, what they do is the goal is, and everything I'm about to say is, this isn't like a cognitive process where somebody's like thinking and mapping out all the things. This happens like very naturally, very, do I say impulsively? It happens very naturally because usually people that communicate this way are used to doing it, okay? The goal is I am going to communicate to you, okay? There's like three things, okay? I'm going to communicate to you that, that you have caused a problem. You need to remedy the problem. It will cause me intense discomfort until you do, okay? People will communicate in a way that has all three of these things working in tangent, and it's very, very, very difficult to counter it without being a sociopath. So somebody goes, hey, do you want to hang out tomorrow? And you're like, sorry, I've already got plans. And they're like, oh, okay. I am all alone tonight, and apparently no one I know thinks I'm worth hanging out with. So it doesn't seem like it, and nobody will ever agree with me, and I don't give a fuck, okay? This is emotional rape. These messages, this is the equivalent. This is the emotional equivalent to rape, okay? It absolutely is. It seems like an innocuous message, but you do so much with stuff like this, okay? So firstly, you've made a mistake now, okay? You've made a mistake because you didn't want to hang out with me, okay? So you've communicated this, all right? You are the only pathway to which this problem can be solved, okay? You have to hang out with me. And if you don't, well, I'm going to be fucking miserable, okay? Thanks, okay? This method of communicating is so toxic. And it's bad too, because there are so many ways that you can do this and then weaponize psych language. I think this should be a new phenomenon that therapists and everybody talk about called the weaponization of psych language. You can weaponize psych language in order to further validate this statement, right? So if somebody were to question you, like, why would you say that, right? Why would you message them that? I was just openly expressing my feelings. These are literally just I feel statements. What's wrong with that? I was just being a bit vulnerable. Every time I do this, I get punished for it. This is no different. It's always like, there's always like there's a way to take this statement and make it work, and there's a billion of these. We could generate so many of these, like where you find a way to justify it, and now if you even question the statement, now you're like even more the bad guy. Yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry. The only reason I say that is because like when people call out when people call out like fake suicide attempts or whatever, like, well, what does that mean? What is a fake suicide attempt? What does that mean? What's going on is usually a fake suicide threat, not attempt. Those will come as escalations of this type of behavior, right? Because, so let's say that you are kind of sociopathic, or you're just, you know, the game being played. You're like, so let's say somebody says this, oh, okay, I'm all alone tonight. Apparently no one thinks I'm worth hanging out with. Guess not, LOL. Good luck, heart, and then you leave, right? So, and it's so funny too, because watching some people navigate these conversations, I've looked at texts from friends who are like, what, can you tell me what happened here? Sometimes people don't realize that they're giving like the exact like fuck you response to the person without even knowing what's happened, right? So like somebody might respond like this and they genuinely don't see the behavior that's going on here. And this response is like the craziest, like, and now, so when the other person sees it, they're in like full on fucking deathmatch mode, right? So now, like the only way to make this work is you have to escalate. You've got to apply pressure in some way, right? Oh, okay, well, fuck, this person's not engaging with the emotion I'm on. Thanks. I was hoping that at least you'd care, since you told me you didn't like to see me sad. But I guess that's just not true. Have fun tonight. Whatever, right? So now you have to like up the stakes. Like, okay, well, personally, you're like fucking with me. Like, oh no, like, oh, well, you said you would never do this to me, blah, 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 right? You could up the stakes like this. It could be like, yeah, no problem. It could be like the fake push away. Yeah, no problem. I won't bother messaging you again and letting you know anytime I feel sad or whatever. I guess maybe it'd just be better if I always kept this to myself. Or maybe just stopped bothering people entirely. So like upping the, oh, don't ever message anyone, right? It's always like some kind of upping the stakes, right? Oh, I'll never message anyone again. Or it might, or like the getting to the really far thing is like, yeah, thanks. Hopefully the ambulance doesn't take as long to get here this time as it did last time. Something like now, oh fuck, okay, well not right. These types of messages, I call these bids for assurance, and it is so common that I see messages like this, and I watch people trying to navigate the conversations, and they don't see what's going on. And yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if people don't see the games being played. I don't know if the other person isn't aware of the games that they're playing. But yeah, I call these bids for reassurance. They're so toxic because most of the time, an ordinary human will see this and they want to like reassure, like, oh well, no, hold on, well, wait, what's wrong? Talk to me, blah blah blah. But the problem with that type of reassurance is that what you're doing is, remember, okay. Human beings always respond predictably to certain punishments and rewards, okay? Humans always respond predictably, even if they seem crazy. When people seem crazy, they're very rarely crazy unless they're actually like psychotic, right? Like having delusions or experience psychosis, right? Usually they're just showing you, well, these are the behaviors that I exhibit, and these are the things that have gotten me, generally, at least in the short term, things that I've wanted in life. And these types of bids for reassurance are really effective at short-term appeasement, because people will do what they need to I guess make the person feel okay. And yeah, you shouldn't. When people do shit like this, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, good luck. Like you should just respond like that. Okay, well, have fun, I guess. Yeah, good luck with that. And then you just walk away from it. Because as soon as you take a person like this and you start like, oh no, like let me help you, queen, or what's going on, dude? Like, oh no, let me blah blah blah. You're also reinforcing in their head. You're reinforcing in their mind that, oh shit, this does work. This is how I do need to communicate with people. Like this is getting me exactly the response that I want. And they'll go through all of life very subtly, like layering these types of like bids for reassurance in every type of communication they do, knowing that it solicits the type of reaction that they want. But yeah, just like a... Why do you always add 1,000 disclaimers when you criticize women, but anytime a man does something insane, you always are the first to call him retarded trash? I think it really depends on the behavior that you're talking about. I think usually it'll depend on the stereotypes of the particular thing going in, and then it'll depend on the particular behavior we're talking about. But there are definitely times where I've called both and trash. There's a reason why I'm called the rape defender online, okay? So you're saying these are big red flags in potential women partners? No, these are big red flags in either partner. Anytime somebody communicates like this, it's a big deal. You don't ever indulge people who do this stuff. Yeah. Wouldn't this response risk the relationship though? You don't need it. I'll never forget a while back, a friend tried that with me to the point where they said they'd taken too many pills, etc. So I called their bluff and texted their sibling. They were so mad because their siblings rang them in panic. It was pretty awkward. Yeah, that's the thing too. Yeah. But what if I'm really horny? Oh, well, I was going to say that was the thing too, is because women will manipulate with sex sometimes, where a woman really wants something more from you, but she's not getting it. So if she's not getting the type of engagement that she wants emotionally, they're like, oh, well, what if I come over and we like fuck, or what if we hang out, or blah, 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 I can do blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay. But that's just as manipulative, I think. That can happen too. I guess theoretically a guy could do that, but generally it's the other way around. Does this work? It's so plainly desperate and pathetic. You think it wouldn't, huh? But it does. I don't know why it does. Because so many people grow up as people pleasers. Yeah, but I don't know why you'd want to keep that person around. I'm not sure. Usually the person will have one or two other traits that are like worth keeping around, but... Are you planning on having some debates on politics in the future where actual policy is discussed, not just Biden, old, Trump crazy? That's hopefully once the election is over, there's like real policy issues on the table again, but... Serious questions. Females mostly at the most primal, protect kids. Males go out and find materials for the offspring. What is your take that humans can follow this pattern and break from it? That pattern, that's such like an abstracted thing of like human behavior that I'm sure you could... If any part of your navigation of modern society has you imagining what people used to live like in the jungle, it's probably not going to be helpful for navigating modern society. That's all I'll say, okay? Does it work because people don't want the worst case? Like if you were doing something bad, we'd hate to be the person that didn't do something right. So we feel compelled to reassure, to try to keep people safe and at least protect ourselves if they do the worst. Maybe. I think what usually happens is, if I were to guess why this happens, I think that everybody goes through a type of new relationship energy. I don't think that just applies to romantic or sexual relationships. I think that applies to friendships as well. So you meet somebody, you vibe with that person a lot. It's like super fun for like the first few weeks or maybe a couple months, and then things kind of like settle into a more ordinary rhythm. That should be the case. It's like a healthy pattern, I think. But some people in that new relationship energy thing, I think some people will, some people will be very manipulative. There are ways when you're opening up to somebody. This is funny because it dips into one of the things that I used to argue with Redpillers all the time. Redpillers always say things like, don't show any vulnerability. That's the number one way to get a woman to leave you. Like your girl will leave you immediately. I don't believe that ever happens, by the way. But showing vulnerability around certain things, especially depending upon what your demeanor is the easiest way to manipulate somebody in the early stages of knowing somebody. So if generally your demeanor is like colder or more sarcastic or whatever, when you start talking to somebody, if you start oversharing on a whole bunch of like traumatic, like emotional shit, that can be a way to artificially foster a whole bunch of close feelings from the other person to you in a very unhealthy manner in a very short period. It's always a really big red flag when people start, they call it trauma dumping, but when people start just giving you a whole bunch of really personal, like insane shit right off the bat, again, I'm not going to say that they've like thought about manipulating you that way, but that type of communication style, in my opinion, is pretty unhealthy because It's causing them to, they're carrying that early part of the relationship, whether it's a friendship or a romantic one, way, way, way higher than it should be initially, I think, is a really big deal, yeah. Same guy. My question wasn't red pill. I was asking, how is it that humans can ignore our primal instincts? I don't, here's what I'll say, okay? If you drop some water on the floor and it forms a puddle, okay? This is the shape of the puddle, all right? Now, when you look at the water puddle and you think like, well, the water puddle is the way that it is because this is how the water landed, right? And maybe the water puddle could expand or shrink or roll somewhere, right? Versus, let's say there's like a hole in the road and water takes like the same shape, but it's because it's in a hole, right? People will look at water that is in a hole, or they'll look at like water on the floor, and it might have the same shape. Fuck, this isn't a good analogy. I'm realizing this isn't a good analogy. I'm trying to extend the analogy from the water in a hole. If you see water in a hole on the ground and it takes a certain shape, you don't ask why is the water the shape that it is? Because the answer would be, well, the water can only be that shape. Look at the hole that it's in. That's, of course, like the water isn't choosing the shape. That's just the hole that the water's in, so it necessarily takes the shape, right? It's not that it's choosing that shape, and to imagine it could be another way it's hard to imagine. We'll see if this analogy could fit to what I'm trying to explain. I don't know if it will be or not, okay? Humans have all sorts of behaviors, okay? Some simpler, some more complicated. Because we're human and we're trying to organize our behavior, or we're trying to understand our behavior. When humans look at things, we like to group things up into patterns and we like to make sense of things, right? When I stare at a particular object, it's not just a bunch of matter and atoms and whatever. It's like it's like a whole thing that seems to like be of one consistent thing, and it's got different parts to it. And we might give a name to this. We might call it like a tree, okay? Like, is there a good reason to separate the tree from the sky behind it? Objectively, not really. Is there a good reason to separate the tree from the ground that it grows from? I mean, not really. We like to organize things in our head because it gives us the ability to navigate in an environment and make choices in that environment to ensure our survival, right? So it makes sense to us to see the tree separately from the sky because, the tree is closer to the sky. And it makes sense to separate the tree from the ground because maybe we want to interact with the tree and get fruit from it, blah, 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 right? All this to say that when you look at human behavior, there's a temptation, I think, to hardcore categorize it in certain ways where it's like, oh, this was like part of our nature and this is like built into our genes and blah, 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 okay? Some behavior is probably very hardwired such that when a thing happens, you have like a strong, instinctual, not learned thing where it's just like you just have that reaction. I think humans have some instinctual behavior, I believe. Like hearing a baby cry, I think should make everybody uncomfortable. Or when you see things with facial expressions exhibit pain, you have, I don't know if it's called mirror neurons, but you have like an empathetic response. It's very difficult for a healthy human mind to look at a baby or an animal like suffering or crying and to not feel some sort of like protective or empathetic response to that, right? However, I think that this leads to a lot of people assuming that every single human behavior must be like hardcore instinctually wired into us. However, in a certain environment, it might be that behavior completely disappears, okay? So there's a behavior that's crucial to human survival, but as soon as you change the environment, the behavior disappears entirely. Well, why? Hold on. The faulty thing that you do in your mind is you go, well, if this behavior was necessary for our survival, it is obviously hardwired into us, right? But what we don't realize is that logic is non sequitur. The conclusion doesn't actually follow from the premise. Just because something is essential to our survival doesn't necessarily mean it's hardwired into us, because the behavior that was essential to our survival could be a byproduct of other things in a certain environment, right? Two good examples that I can think of are, one is food. In the wilderness, we don't have good, I don't think we have any adaptive mechanisms in our body to really identify healthy food. We can identify rotting food very well for dairy and meat. And we actually have a pretty good ability to associate foods that make us sick. I think up to 24 hours. If you eat something and you get sick, your mind will make you hate that food. I think that I don't know what that reflex is called, but I think that lasts for up to a day. But we have no way to discern, like, okay, well, actually, I would say we have the opposite instincts. If you find something that gives you like a really, really, really high sugary candy bar versus like a salad with mixed greens, your body will want to consume the candy bar and it will taste better and you will search for things like that, The reason why is because, well, in the environment of nature, there's not a whole bunch of highly processed food around. There's not a whole bunch of stuff competing for your attention. And most of what you eat is probably going to be reasonably healthy, right? Fruits and vegetables are going to be very fibrous. Even the fruits and vegetables that we ate, 10, 20,000 years ago before agriculture were significantly different than the fruits we eat today, right? A fruit that you eat today is bred to perfection for human consumption. Whereas in the past, there's probably a lot more fibrous elements you had to digest. It took a lot more chewing. It was like not as tasty, right? You get a lot of other shit going on. So you look at humans, you look at bodies, and you say, wow, people are fat. How is this possible when one of the most essential elements of a human being is the food that you eat and the composition of your body and everything, right? And the answer is because you didn't evolve to pick healthy foods. Your environment just kind of set that up for you, okay? All of this to say, to bring this around, you asked a gendered question about like men and women and how they interact in the with each other in the wilderness or whatever. One of the big faulty assumptions I think that we've made for a long time is that women gravitate towards some behaviors and men gravitate towards other behaviors because it's hardwired into us. It's instinctual and biological. There's probably some degree of truth in that, but I think that largely that assumption is probably nowhere near as true as we thought. And that's why you end up today with these huge crises of birth rates, because the assumption is, well, a woman is happiest when she's taking care of a baby and she's like, producing more children in a household. That would be like the default assumption, right? However, what's more likely now, it seems to be the case, is a long, long, long time ago when we were wandering through the jungles and shit, men tend to be on the more athletic side than women. Women are the only ones that can produce kids. So as a result of that bifurcation of what we're genetically predisposed towards means that women are probably going to be more likely to stay and take care of children, and men are probably going to be more likely to go out and hunt. But generations and millennia of that behavior, I think, have fooled us into thinking like, wow, we must be hardwired for these roles, when that's probably not the case. And when you're in an environment where men and women have a lot more options available to them, and you don't need to hunt for survival, and you don't need to be having children to ensure the survival of a clan or your species or whatever, humans might make other decisions because other things are just more attractive or more fun or more appealing to us. Yeah, Jesus, okay. All that to say, don't just assume that just because we do something for a long time, it's instinctual, and don't assume that just because something is essential to our survival, it's instinctual. Neither one of those things can be true. You have one of the most important things that you need for metabolizing, to have a metabolism, right? For homeostasis is oxygen. Your body has absolutely no way of detecting if you have an appropriate level of oxygen in your body. You have no way of knowing. But the reason why is because in nature, why the fuck would you even need to develop that? You're never breathing anything besides oxygen, or oxygenated air, I should say, because technically oxygen is like 20% of the atmosphere. You just, as long as you breathe, you're fine. You don't need to develop a survival mechanism off of that. But if we create a different environment where you can breathe in some other gas that's replacing oxygen instead, then you'll just sit there and breathe it until you die, like a retard, like an actual fucking retard. You'll just breathe it and then you'll die, and you'll have no idea what the fuck is going on. Are there no such things as primal instincts in your mind, like at all, or are we malleable? I think there are probably some things that are instinctual, but I think generally humans are like more I think humans are generally more like there's a difference between learned behavior and instinctual behavior. I don't know what the second thing is called. Is it just called learned behavior? Is that why carbon monoxide does that? Carbon monoxide doesn't do anything special. What happens is your blood, the only thing that your blood can detect or that your body can detect, I don't know if it's because of your blood levels or not. I don't know where the feeling comes from, but you can detect the elevation of carbon dioxide in your body. When the carbon dioxide goes up, then the stress to like breathe increases. So like if you hold your breath and your body's metabolizing stuff, that's because your carbon dioxide levels are increasing. But if you can breathe in something that's not oxygen and then breathe out the carbon dioxide, you'll feel fine. Even if what you're breathing in is not oxygen and you will eventually die. Yeah. I think there are some animals that are highly instinctual. Like I think most of their behavior is like genetic, I think. And then there are other animals. I think as the animal becomes more sophisticated, less behavior is instinctual and more behavior is learned. I don't know if humans do humans have any instinctual behavior? I'm sure we do at least a bit. This is AI. Instincts are believed to exist in humans. Observations of children in controlled and uncontrolled settings suggest that every action and activity of children is driven by instincts. This is a meaningless sentence. Humans, like other organisms, rely on inborn mechanisms for survival, indicating the presence of instincts. That's not really what I'm talking about. Wait, is this AI? I can't tell. Oh, I think it is. Hold on. This paper looks like... Wait. I just want this paper. Okay. We have nothing else going on. Fuck it. Okay, let's read some of the underlying paper. One of the issues that AI has is it doesn't do a good job at semantic understanding of like terms. No, I shouldn't use the term. I shouldn't say semantic understanding there. It's contextual. Like this sentence is meaningless. It's not really answering the question that we're asking, right? Do instincts exist in humans? Where an instinct is like a hardwired behavior that exists like genomically and not something that you learn. And when the first answer is instincts are believed to exist in humans, observations of children in controlled and uncontrolled settings suggest that every action and activity of children is driven by instincts. This sentence is kind of meaningless. And then inborn mechanisms for survival doesn't necessarily indicate the presence of instincts. That's not really what we're asking, unless you're using instincts in a more casual term. But I don't know. But it cited this paper, and the first sentence of this paper looked like something more. Okay. Can I just open this? Okay, whatever. Observations of children in controlled... Wait, real quick. This is by Sharmista Chakravarthi, published in 2017. Journal of Clinical and Medical Case Studies. Okay. I don't know that if that's a good journal or not, but just so you know. Okay. Observations of children in controlled and uncontrolled settings leads to believe that every action and activity of children is driven by instincts. Men and animals are instinctive by nature. Instincts are uncontrollable urges that drives living beings towards a complicated behavior. In the behavioral sciences, instinct is generally understood as the innate part of behavior that emerges without any training or education in humans. Okay, yes. This is the definition of instinct that I'm aware of, but okay. An instinct is an activity which involves an individual to deal competently with the environment without previous experience and practice. Emotion is an affective experience that one undergoes during an instinctive excitement. McDougall discovered 14 basic instincts, included that each and every emotion, whatever it may be, is the product of some instinctive behavior, emotional experiences, or associated with some instincts or biological drives. Every emotional experience... Okay. So I think that I don't think I'm making this up. I think the more complicated the creature... I think the more abstracted our behavior is from whatever our instinctual foundation is. So like I think for a bug, when a bug is born, I don't know if bugs learn. I don't even know if they have the capacity for learning. Like a bug is born with some instinctual understanding, and then like all of its behavior is like this. It's like right on the instinct. And then I think the more sophisticated a creature becomes, especially once you hit mammals, I think that you might have some instinctual foundation, but then it's a large process of learning and environmental adaptation to apply, to basically learn and train to take your instinctual things and apply them to the environment. So like one example of this might be, I think cats have some instinctual thing to like chase things or look at things, but they don't really have an instinctual thing to hunt. Like a cat isn't like born to go and hunt things, but it does like to like look at stuff like that. So what'll happen is when cats are born, parents, one of the reasons why, or it's theorized, that one of the reasons why cats play with each other the way that they do after they're born is because that serves as early training for when they eventually do hunt. That all of the play that you see when cats are stalking each other or their parents or they're hitting each other, whatever, this serves as future training for when they actually do go on a hunt. So there's like an instinctual basis for what's eventually like the learned and trained and then exhibited behavior, whatever, right? How do you account for unique baby behaviors like being able to support their whole body weight or holding their breath for much longer? I don't know if babies can hold their breath for much longer. I've never heard that before. That might be true. For supporting your body weight, there's actually a name for this. I think it has to do with, I think human bodies exist in 3 dimensions, okay? Because we live in a 3-dimensional world. If you increase the size of a human, the weight is increasing as a cube because volumetrically you are filling up, right? That's way too big. As human beings get larger and larger, you become longer, wider, and hopefully thicker, right? You gain in all 3 dimensions. However, I believe that if you, for training strength, for being able to apply force and move things, I think the most determinative factor is the overall cross-sectional span of your musculature. And that can only ever grow as a square through 2 dimensions. So what happens is like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds can run around at a playground and they can do like pull-ups and stuff on monkey bars with no training whatsoever. Like a child might be able to do 5 or 10 pull-ups without any training whatsoever. It's not because children are secretly ripped. It's not because while they're a child, maybe they're just very lean, which kind of means ripped. It doesn't mean that they have like more developed muscles at that point in life. It just means that because they're smaller volumetrically, they're much smaller than they are weaker in terms of their ability to move things, if that makes sense. So if you take a human being and all else equal, all you do is you expand the size more and more and more and more and more. You grow them up more and more and more. The larger the person, the weaker they would become because, again, your overall muscle cross-section can only grow in a square, but the overall weight and size of your body grows as a cube. I think that's why children can be stronger, I believe, or appear stronger in terms of like body weight exercises. What do you think about the things versus people difference between men and women? Apparently, it can be observed in newborns. I haven't read all the studies on that, so I'm only repeating what I've read in a summary before. But supposedly, at a very, very, very early age, boys and girls gravitate towards different types of toys. That could be true. Destiny, do this one. What about when you run from a bear and they chase? That's not instinct? Well, again, like I think instinct serves as like a very, very, very foundational thing, and then you learn behavior that you learn behavior that is informed by your instincts. But I mean, humans chase bears sometimes, so. You're also very flexible as a kid. Now everything hurts. Yeah, you might be. Flexible as a kid. Where's the picture of baby shows ideal squat form? Or is it ideal deadlift form? Nathan, why? Why are you screaming? Noggin in neutral position, upright torso, strong lumbar. We got a good neutral back. Crease of hips below parallel, squatting ass to grass. Weight is firmly on the heels, not shifted forward to the toes, so good hamstring flexibility. Feet are shoulder width apart. These feet are not shoulder width apart. This kid is fucking up hard here. Knees tracking over, but not beyond toes. He's hitting glutes. Would that be true? I feel like narrower. I feel like if your legs are narrower, I feel like you'd be more focused on quads, and the wider out you go, I feel like the more focused you'd be on glutes. I feel like it's the opposite. What do you think about the trend where some women say they feel safer with a bear than with a guy? It's retarded. But I mean, I think the thing they're getting at is like, you've had creepy men around you. You haven't had creepy bears around you. So it's probably just like a... Women are pretty retarded when they say that. But also keep in mind that like the average guy probably thinks that like, if you just went full sicko mode, he could probably beat a lion one-on-one too. So, I mean, we all have our delusions.